Klase-klase na ta. Klase-klase lang sa ta. Kita raman. Okay. So the lesson that we're going to discuss for this meeting is about understanding Judaism. So I know you're already familiar with Judaism because we already mentioned this one during our previous lessons, but this time we're going to dig deeper about this religion. Right, so lesson objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students will be able to identify the historical background of Judaism by tracing its origins and central figures. Recite the 10 Commandments as stated in the Old Testament. Explain the core teaching of Judaism is a covenant of one God with a chosen people versus other people with many gods. Distinguish a story from the Old Testament that demonstrates the Jewish belief in one God. All right. So, kamo naman yung duwan. Nara dyan siyang duwan no mo. Tubag, ani na pautana. Okay. I want you to ask these questions, guys. How religion, culture, and geography are interconnected? How does one influence others? So let's refresh our minds with regard to our previous topics for the past lessons. Okay, Jabber. How religion, culture, and geography are interconnected? Paano ito nakaka-influence sa isa't isa? Yung religion, culture, and geography.
Sabi mo, sir, paano? Sa connection nila?
Yeah, what's their connection?
Religion, culture, mga beliefs, sir.
Belief. So, bakit siya, like for example, how does culture and geography affect religion or influence religion?
Parang yung nasa culture at geography, sir, kasi may nakukuha tayo doon na naging part sa ating religion na pinapaniniwalaan na rin natin.
Just like, you are correct, but can you please give a specific example? Like, in culture, this specific culture affects religion. This geography, the location of this community affects their religion.
Okay, bigyan ng example, sir.
Sige, example.
Sa culture, sir, kasi yung parang sa mga nuno natin, sir, yung nag-believe sila sa yung mga pinaniniwalaan nila dati, sir, na hanggang ngayon nagpasa-pasa na sa atin, sir.
Just like?
Just like mga kuan, sir, kanang sample pag may mga samad, sir, kanang unsaon siya pag-ayod, sir. Kanang mga herbal. Tama, sir.
Hindi daw na-impress si Anjali sa answer mo.
Wala.
Uy, damay mo na ko. Sabi, king mo na ako.
Wala ako ka-search, sir.
Sige na, okay lang. Bita, okay lang. Anyway, thank you very much, Jabber, for giving your thoughts and ideas about this one.
Welcome, sir.
Okay, now let's continue. So Abraham is believed to be the founder of Judaism. God called and promised Abraham that he would become the father of many nations. Abraham heeded the call of God and followed what God had commanded him. So the beginning of Judaism existed through the covenant of God to Abraham. His promise. He promised that he would be the father of many nations, including his chosen people. So that's where Judaism started. The promise of God to Abraham. Through Moses, a descendant of Abraham, a covenant between God and the Israelites was established. Part of God's covenant with his people was to bring them to the promised land of Canaan. So remember the story of Moses in Exodus, how he led the Hebrews or the Israelites to the promised land, how he saved his people from the hands of the Egyptians. So that's where the beginning, where the people, the chosen people of God, went to the promised land, which is in Canaan. Okay. Part of the covenant between God and Israel is to obey the Ten Commandments that God gave to Moses. So it's not just God just did not provided them with everything they need in order to free themselves from the hands of the Egyptians, but as well as things that they need to follow, the commandments of God that they need to follow or they need to adhere. As read in the Old Testament, the tablets contain the 10 precepts that the Israelites must follow to show their faith and loyalty to God, as stipulated in the covenant at Mount Sinai. So the 10 commandments was given to Moses in Mount Sinai during the time when they were already freed from the hands of the Egyptians. The Israelites wandered in the desert for almost 40 years before they were able to reach Canaan. So imagine they wandered in the deserts for 4 decades. So that's how long they traveled from Egypt to the land of promise to reach Canaan. The death of Moses led to Joshua's takeover of the leadership. Joshua conquered the promised land, and in this place, the Israelites established a kingdom with kings, experiencing civil wars and divisions until the Assyrian and the Babylonian invasions that led to the destruction of Jerusalem. So, the truth, even though Moses was the one who led the Israelites to free themselves from the hands of Egyptians, but Moses was unable to enter the promised land. He died during their travel for 40 years. So upon his death, Joshua took over the leadership, and he was the one who led the Israelites and conquered the Canaanites in order to reclaim the land that being promised by the Lord to them. So during the time when they were in the Canaan, they experienced civil wars. They were conquered for many times. They were in wars, and the biggest or most prominent events when they were conquered were kung sa Assyrian at saka sa Babylon. Itong Assyrian, Assyria is a part of Iraq na. Both Babylon and Assyria, nasa Iraq yan sila ngayon. The origins of Judaism. Okay. Aside from being a religion, Judaism is also associated with ethnic identity. In fact, its association with religion came late in the Jewish vocabulary. Originally, the word Jew referred to the Jewish identity rather than a belief. Before, the word Judaism kasi, it is rooted from the word Judah, one of the tribes of Israel. Kasi when you study the history of Israel, the kingdom was divided kasi with Judah at saka Israel. So, Judaism, dyan siya galing. Yung the word Judah, dyan yung galing ang Judaism. So, before, it's not a religion, but it's about their identity, the ethnical identity or ethnicity of the Israelites. But it came late during sa Jewish, when the Jewish established vocabularies of the words being used in their culture. And they define it in Judaism as a religion of their people. According to Jacob Neusner, a prominent Jewish scholar, the use of the word Jew means two things: an ethnic group and a religious group. So, which means that when we say Jew, it could mean your ethnicity or your religious affiliation. Kasi, meron ng mga Jewish ngayon, there are Jews that are not Jew by blood or Hebrew by blood, but they were just converted to the religion, but still they regarded or referred as Jew. Therefore, it does not follow that a Jew is a follower of Judaism. One is considered a Jew by his or ethnic identity or religious identity or both. So, which means that you can be a Jew if you converted yourself to Judaism, even if you don't have Jewish blood in you. Or it could be both. Or even if you're not a practicing Jew, meaning you do not practice Judaism, but still you have Jewish blood, you are still referred as a Jew. As a religion, Judaism identifies itself with the biblical Israel, which started during the time of Abraham and Sarah for more than 4,000 years ago. This Israel refers to the people who obeyed the laws and commandments of God written in the Hebrew Bible. So the Jewish people today identify themselves to the biblical Israel that started from Abraham and Sarah. So actually, the word Israel came from it's the name given by God to Jacob. Say Abraham. I forgot. Abraham. I forgot. Wait lang ha. Let me check. Say I forgot. Sorry. Isaac pala. So Isaac, he was named by the Lord as Israel. Say Abraham is the father of Jacob, and Jacob is the father of Isaac. Okay, the history of Judaism can be divided into biblical and post-biblical history. So when you try to study the history of Judaism and the Jewish people, a very rich history. Kasi during the ancient times or biblical times pa sila. They were conquered by many nations. They were scattered around the world. And in 1948, they were able to claim their land. Dun sa, it was established by the United Nations. And I think Philippines was the only nation who voted yes, or in Asia, na ma-establish itong state of Israel na an independent state of Jewish people. In its early years, the teachings of Judaism were transmitted from one generation to another through oral tradition. So before the conception of writing system, before may papyrus or yung sa mga tablets, the teachings in Judaism were passed on from generation to generation through oral tradition, meaning verbal lang. Around 400 BCE, authors from different traditions and groups compiled stories and narratives that became the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. The first 5 books, they were called as Torah or the Law. Ito yung Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And we also have Nevi'im or the books of prophets. We also have Ketuvim. Ketuvim, ito yung mga songs, mga teachings like sa Psalms, so on and so forth. By the way, we'll discuss that later on. The Hebrew Bible starts with a creation story, narrative on the origin of sin, and the calling of Abraham, whom God later called Abraham. So sa Hebrew Bible, the text started with the story of creation, how the Lord created the entire universe, the living creatures, the earth, the human beings, as well as the origin of sin, how the first man committed sin. Also tackled how the Lord called Abram. God first established a covenant to Abraham. He said that I will be your God and you will be my people. So that's the first covenant being established by the Lord to Abraham, and it passed on to his descendants. Abraham and Sarah were at that time too old to bear children, but God gave them a son whom they named Isaac. Isaac had two sons, Esau at saka sorry, let me correct myself earlier. Si Abraham, anak niya si Isaac. Si Isaac, anak niya si Esau at saka si Jacob. Pero ito si Jacob, siya yung pinalanganan na Israel. Is the ancestor of the Israeli people. His sons later became the source of the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph, one of Jacob's sons, was sold by his brothers and taken to Egypt, but became successful in the court of the Pharaoh. When Jacob and his sons experienced famine, Joseph rescued them and brought them to Egypt. So, are you familiar with the film Prince of Egypt? It shows the story of Joseph, how he was sold by, kay Moses pala yun. Sorry. Sa story ni Joseph, he was sold by his brothers because of jealousy. They even tried them to get killed sa road ba yun? I really forgot the entire story.
King of Dreams siguro yun.
Ha?
King of Joseph, King of Dreams siguro.
Si
Or Moses. Nalibog
Moses
ka na sa
yun,
dalawang
sa Prince of Egypt.
Okay. Baka nalibog ka sa Diyos.
Ayan. sorry. Yung story ni Joseph, different from the Prince of Egypt story pala. So sorry. So the story of Joseph was that he became successful doon sa Egypt kasi he was able to interpret the dream of the Pharaoh. That's why he was given a higher position, which is second to the Pharaoh. So that time there was a famine. There was a worldwide famine. So the Israeli people came to Egypt because Joseph rescued them during the time kasi yung Egypt lang yung may reserve ng food. Egypt was the only nation who has food reserve kasi doon sa dream ng Pharaoh. Tapos the Lord given Joseph vision in order to interpret the dream of the Pharaoh. That's why he was able to prepare for the famine. The Exodus tells the story of the plight of the people of Israel from Egypt. During the 1200 BCE, the new Pharaoh of Egypt condemned all the Israelites to slavery. It's because nag-iba na yung leadership ng Egypt that time. They forgot the story how did the Israelites come to Egypt that time kasi because of the influence of Joseph. So nalimutan na yung legacy ni Joseph that time. That's why itong Pharaoh during this time he enslaved the Israeli. He was also threatened din kasi yung tribe ng ethnic group ng Hebrew people, dumarami sila sa Egypt. He was threatened na baka he will be parang i-conquer ng Hebrew yung Egypt kasi dumarami yung tribes nila. So ganun din, enslave them. Moses, who was born and raised in the court of the Pharaoh, helped liberate the Israelites from oppression and slavery with God's help. So Moses was saved by his family. Si Miriam yung sa Nile River, yung nilagay siya sa basket. Then the daughter of Pharaoh that time, nakita siya, then she adopted Moses. But the Lord called Moses in order to free his people from the oppression and slavery of the hands of the Egyptians, especially from the Pharaoh. So after Moses accepted God's command, he appeared before the Pharaoh and asked to free the Israelites. But the Pharaoh was difficult to persuade until 10 plagues came to ravage Egypt, the last of which was the death of firstborn Egyptian children. Ito, yung burning bush. The Lord called Moses and commissioned him to a purpose or a mission, which is to free his people from the hands of the Egyptians. Ito yung scene, yung sa burning bush. But because Pharaoh was very difficult to persuade, that's why the Lord provided 10 plagues in order to convince the Pharaoh that the Lord that being worshipped by the Hebrew people or the Israeli is true. And the last one, yung nagpa-convince na talaga sa Pharaoh is in the death of firstborn, yung sa angel of death. That's why meron tayong first Passover kasi, by the way, we'll discuss that later. Later na lang, we'll save that one. The liberation of the Israelites from the hands of the Pharaoh was called Exodus. Exodus literally means exit because this is the part in the Bible wherein they exited in Egypt. Today, the Jews celebrate this dramatic exit from slavery and a memorial of God's love to his chosen people in a feast called Passover. Passover yung tawag kasi, they were passed by the angel of death. Yung may mga stain ng blood doon sa door nila ng blood of the lamb. Yung may stain ng blood, which means that ito yung hindi siya pwede patayin ng angel of death, ng firstborn, if yung door ng house ay may stain ng blood of the lamb. Okay, freed from the hands of their enemies, the Israelites settled temporarily at Mount Sinai, where God handed down the law to Moses. The law includes the 10 commandments and feasts to observe. So, ito yung 10 commandments. These are the commandments or the laws given to Moses to be conveyed to the Israelites so that ito yung ipa-follow nila. These are the commandments of the Lord that they need to follow. And the Lord given that to Moses in Mount Sinai. Yung sa if napanood niyo yung the 10 Commandments na movie or film. Okay, the 10 Commandments, Exodus 20, 1-17. First is, you shall have no other gods before me. So it's very clear in the 10 Commandments that the Israelites should not worship other gods aside from him because there's no other God aside from him. Then you shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. So the Lord forbid them to create images, to worship, or anything that they bow down to. So meaning yung mga ribulto. Yung ibig sabihin ito. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. So, the name of the Lord is holy. That's the implication of this specific part in the 10 Commandments. So, you should be careful when it comes to using the Lord, the name of the Lord, kasi it's holy. Next, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Diba, remember in the story of creation, the Lord rested in the seventh day because the Sabbath day should be allocated to worship Him. Ganun siya. Sabbath day literally means rest day. Dapat merong time na pahinga. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. So it's very explicit that the Lord wanted us to respect and honor our parents. Next is you shall not murder. Say murder, you should not kill intently. ito yung ibig sabihin, there's difference between, kasi ngayon sa atin, there's difference between murder and homicide. If you try to research that one, there's a difference between the two. Yung murder, ito talaga yung intention to kill someone. You have the purpose to take away the life of a person. You shall not commit adultery, which means that you need to be faithful, loyal. You need to be need to perform fidelity to your spouse. None. You shall not steal. Oh. Bawal mangawat. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. This means that you should not lie about your neighbor in order to put him into a situation wherein madiin siya. You should not give false accusations to your neighbor. Next one, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So you shall not steal properties that are not yours. Then we have the Mechilta. The Mechilta Bakodesh 8 provides a layer of meaning that complements a specific commandments in the Ten Commandments. The Mechilta is a Judaic exegesis or commentary of the book of Exodus. Ito yung Mechilta Bakodesh. Ito yung compositions or the views and perspectives or commentaries of yung mga biblical scholars, yung mga rabbis. Kasi they have their own interpretation. Okay, a passage of called Shema, or means here, found in Deuteronomy 6:1-9, reminds followers of Judaism to adhere to and observe the commandments of God. The Shema is an expression of fidelity to God and a reminder to follow His commandments. Meaning, ito yung this passage called Shema that can be found in Deuteronomy. It's like the admission of faith to the Lord. Okay, the great commandment in Deuteronomy 6:4-9. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, with all your strength and all your mind and love. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's the greatest commandment stated in Deuteronomy. So, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, which means that Judaism practices monotheistic religion, the belief and worship in only one God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength, which means that you need to love the Lord in all aspects of your life. These commandments that I give to you today are to be in your hearts, meaning it should be inscribed in our hearts. Impress them on your children, meaning we should teach children this greatest commandment of mine. Talk about them when you sit at the home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. So, which means that the Lord is very serious when it comes to passing down His commandments, the teachings from generations to generations, from parents to children, from ancestors to descendants. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates, so that the Israelites will be reminded of this greatest commandment by the Lord. Okay, aside from Moses, another important figure in Judaism is David, who is known in his epic fight against Goliath. So I think you're familiar with this story. David and Goliath. David, when you look at his stature, when you compare his physical appearance to Goliath, you can really say that he's underrated, or he's what do you call that? another term for underrated or opposite ng dominant. My God. Wait ha. Hmm. Subservient or submissive siya. Like, he can be easily, if you look at the physical statures of David, he can be easily defeated by Goliath. Kasi Goliath is a giant, right? So, but it's different story. David was able to defeat Goliath. Okay, David became the king of Israel after the death of King Saul. So, King Saul was the very first king in Israel. Before, yung leaders ng Israeli before the conception of king, tawag ano like prophets at saka judges pa yun. Like judges. Then after that, the conception of kings is King Saul. Then after King Saul, it's David. He ruled Israel for 40 years and is considered the greatest ruler in Jewish history. David was also referred as I forgot. By the way. So David's son, Solomon was the one who inherited the throne of David. Also became king of Israel and played an important role in Jewish history. King Solomon was known for the construction of the first temple in Jerusalem. He gained control of the northern and southern kingdoms, formed alliances with many nations, and improved routes for trade. King Solomon was considered as the wisest person. Kasi when the Lord asked him kung ano yung gusto niya ma-receive, he answered wisdom. That's why he became the wisest person in the world. That's why yung mga rulers, kings and queens, and other nations were astonished by the wisdom he possessed. That's why he was able to attract alliances with them. His death caused division and the dispersal of two kingdoms, Judah in the south and Israel. Ito na. This was his death led to the division of the kingdom of Israel. Ito yung sa Judah at saka sa Israel sa north. The Jews were dispersed and diffused to various parts of the Assyrian Empire, eventually weakening the kingdom of Israel. Kasi divided na yung Israel. That's why other nations were jealous of them, were able to conquer them. Example, itong Assyrian Empire. It's formerly part ng ng Iraq. The sources of basic teachings and doctrine of Judaism. Okay. Of course, the Hebrew Bible or Tanakh. Yung Tanakh divided into three, the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Not just a compilation of books, but also collection of historical narratives, myths, poems, laws, genealogies, sayings, love songs, prophecies, and prayers. So they were compiled into one. And the Hebrew Bible is divided into three major sections. First is the Torah, the first 5 books or the Pentateuch. Then the Nevi'im, the prophetic books. And itong Ketuvim, the sacred writings. Okay, the Torah consists of the following books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Say Genesis, it's all about the story of creation, the creation of man, Adam, their first human beings, Adam and Eve, how they sinned against God, and how it's also about the story of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's about the creation, how did everything begun. The next one is the Exodus. It tells about the exit of Israelites, the deliverance, God, the deliverance from the slavery in Egypt. And Moses was the leader of that exit, the Exodus. Itong Leviticus contains the detailed laws and commandments of God. Yung Leviticus, from the word King Levi, one of the sons of Jacob. Yung he was commissioned by God to become the priest. Yung tribe niya, sila yung tinatawag na priest or mga Levites. So it talks about, in Leviticus, talks about the laws and commandments. Yung 10 commandments the Lord given to Moses in Mount Sinai were emphasized, elaborated in this book, sa Leviticus. The book of Numbers accounts for the rules and obligations of the 12 tribes. Ito yung nandito rin genealogy, the ancestors and descendants of Jewish people. Next one is Deuteronomy. Composed of Moses' reflective speeches, which summarize the meaning of the events in Exodus and the journey in the desert. Kasi ito yung 40 years journey nila from Egypt. They wandered in the desert before they came to the land of promise, Canaan. And we have the Nevi'im. It features stories and narratives on the plight, suffering, exploitation, and other encounters of the Jews at the hands of the conquerors. Sa Book of Prophets, ni Amos, Joshua, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, Jonah, Habakkuk, and Micah. This compilation contains the teachings, preachings, and other accounts written by the prophets. And we also have the Ketuvim. It features the poetry and metaphors. It contains the Book of Psalms, the Proverbs, Song of Songs, Ecclesiastes, Job, Esther, Lamentations, Ruth, Daniel, and Chronicles. It consists of yung mga philosophy, yung wisdom, such as you can find in the Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. In Psalms, yung mga songs of David to the Lord. And we have the Mishnah. It's a compilation of rabbis' teachings of the Torah that were collected in 200 CE. Yung Mishnah, yung compilations of texts written by rabbis wherein it contains their interpretations, commentaries about the Torah, kung sa Book of Law. The Mishnah contains two important documents, the Halakha and the Agada. See, Halakha deals with judicial matters, while Agada contains stories, moral teachings, and theological discussions. Ito kasing, yung state of Israel kasi, they do not regard Judaism as a religion, but it also encompasses in the secular, in the government sectors, meaning most of their policies, laws of the land were derived from Judaism, yung sa Torah, sa law, derived from their religion. So merong influence yung teachings and Judaism sa kanilang government policies. Okay, the aim of Mishnah is to show how all things are arrayed in a hierarchical system of sanctification, meaning how should we regard the sacred things and how to be sacred in yung implications ng Mishnah. Okay, the Talmud is a collection of rabbinic teachings that provide deep insights into the life of Jewish people following the Torah. The Mishnah and Gemara were incorporated in it. Talmud defined as a sustained systematic amplification and analysis of passages of the Mishnah and other teachings alongside the Mishnah. So it's the same. You see, Talmud, it refers to the insights, to the implications provided by the scholars or experts of Bible, sa mga Jewish experts, their commentaries. Then Midrash refers to the rabbis' interpretations of the teachings of the Torah. Ancient rabbis used midrash to draw meanings from the Torah and apply them in real-life situations. So, as what you can observe, aside from the Hebrew Bible, meron ding mga teachings itong sa Judaism wherein it contains their own interpretation, their commentaries, their insights, their perspectives from Hebrew Bible. So, ganun yung text na pina-follow ng uh, mga Jews. Then basic teachings and doctrines of Judaism. The basic dogmas of Judaism are summarized by the medieval Jewish philosopher Moses Maimonides. Then first is the belief in God's existence. So they believe that God existed, that God is real, that God is true. Then the belief in his unity, the belief in his incorporeality, meaning God does not possess physical bodies since he's God. He's not a human being, he is God. He doesn't have physical bodies just like us. The belief in his timelessness, meaning the Lord isn't bound by time, meaning he existed from eternity to eternity. The belief that he is approachable through prayer. So they believe that we can approach God through prayer. We can say anything to God we want. The belief in prophecy. So there are prophecies in the Bible that believe that it will come true. The belief in the superiority of Moses to all other prophets, since Moses was the one who led them to their exit, to end their slavery from the hands of the Egyptians. And the belief in the revelation of the law, and that the law as contained in the Pentateuch is that revealed by Moses. So the belief in the 10 Commandments. Then the belief that in the immutability of the law, which means that we cannot change the law. Although there are a lot of interpretations or we call that translations, it's because of the constraints in languages, but the thought or the idea is the same. You cannot change the law, even just one word. The belief in divine providence. So believe that the Lord provides them what they need. Remember the story in when they're wandering in the desert, when they don't have food to eat, the Lord provided them manna. And that's a divine providence, and they believe in that. They believe in divine justice. So believe that the Lord will bring justice to people. It's not just them as they will seek justice when they were wronged by other people, but the Lord himself will bring justice. And the belief in the coming of the Messiah. So they were being promised by the Lord that Messiah will come in order to save them. But fortunately, they didn't believe that it was Jesus. They didn't believe Jesus was the promised Messiah kasi during that time, they were under the Roman Empire, meaning they were under the rulership of Romans at the time. And the freedom that they want to receive from the Lord is political freedom. And that's not the kind of freedom being promised by the Lord. Kasi spiritual freedom yung promise ni Lord sa kanila. Hindi lang siya political, not just physical, kinds of freedom, but spiritual, which encompasses all facets of aspects in life. Then the belief in the resurrection in human immortality. So they believe that one day our body will be glorified and we will be resurrected and will share eternity with the Lord. Then God and a covenant are regarded as the two central beliefs of Judaism. Being essential attributes of the religion, Judaism would be of no essence without these beliefs. Covenant at Mount Sinai gives Judaism among the religions of the same family as a distinct character. Although there are other religions that are associated with Abraham, but what sets the distinction of Judaism from other Abrahamic religions, ito yung covenant ni Lord sa Israeli people. When the Lord established a covenant with Moses. Then the Shema or Creed speaks about the belief of Jews that God is one. It's like the testimony of faith sa kanilang religion. Yes, it's already 1:27. We'll have 3 minutes left, and this discussion is marami pa. 53 slides pa tayo out of 72. I will just make a recording of this discussion. Then please you watch the recorded version na lang kasi we need to finish 2 topics ngayon na week. This Friday, proceed na lang ta sa Understanding Christianity. So okay lang ba sa inyo yon? Guys, I want your response kung okay lang sa inyo na yung continuation nito is recorded na lang, tapos I will just post it. I will upload it in YouTube and post the links in our Schoology online course. Then this Friday, we will continue. We will proceed to the discussion in the lesson Understanding Christianity. Okay lang sa inyo? Angeli, okay lang? Anyway, wala na kayong mag-post ko later. By the way, mag-post ko later sa inyong PT. Then para ngayon a week, hindi na kayo mag-submit ng You don't have to submit the weekly assessment activities anymore in the modules, but you have to start your PT na. I will post your PT later. Okay lang sa inyo? Okay lang kay Angeli. How about you, Jabber? Wala kay choice na mo okay. Okay, mag-submit kag assessment activities. Jabber. Asan si Jabber? Okay, kay Hanali, okay lang. Okay lang daw kay Jabber. How about you, Hanali? Fun. Basta ganito yun ha. We'll post later your performance task in... sira daw yung mic niya. I-chat mo na lang kung sira yung mic. Okay, so ganito ha. Later, we'll post the performance task that you need to comply in world religions. Then this week, you're not going to submit the assessment activities in the modules anymore. You have to focus on making your PT in world religions. And then I will post a pre-recorded video of the continuation of this discussion, this specific lesson. And on Friday, we'll proceed to discussing the lesson, Understanding Christianity. So, ganun ha. So, okay lang. I think that's it. It's already 1:30. I think you have a class pa after this one. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.